Welcome to the Sports Card Lessons Podcast. I'm your host, Big Ken. Whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on a streaming service, please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. You'll be notified whenever I drop any new content. Welcome. Thanks for being here. I cannot believe it's the end of summer. Just doesn't seem like it could possibly be the end of August. It feels like it was just July 4th last week. I don't know where this summer has gone. It's Labor Day weekend this weekend, the last party weekend of the summer, right? I broke out my Chiefs jersey here, getting ready for the season to kick off. I even adjusted the microphone so we could see the Chiefs emblem. That's a couple of my 49ers fans. I mean, I'm sure they're going to appreciate that. Nothing but fantasy drafts for the next week. And you hear, everybody saying last weekend it's the biggest fantasy draft weekend of the year. I had one draft, right? And now I got a few days off this week, and then the weekend, Monday, Tuesday, nothing but drafts. I've got some drafts going at the same time. My people, they like to wait to the last minute, right? And I understand with injuries and things like that. I just saw there was a couple cuts, right? I just heard before as I was getting ready for this, and I heard that Desmond Ritter got cut. I mean, I'm sure he'll be signed somewhere else, but I couldn't help but laugh, thinking like last year that I was out buying all those cards of his, and that I was selling them all before the season started, and if you remember back, I mean that team was supposed to do so well last year, the easiest schedule and all these new draft picks and everything else. And boy, you cannot trust what everybody says. And no matter how good the situation is for somebody, right, it still could all fall apart. So I thought that was a little bit funny. Not for Desmond, obviously, but for me here in the hobby. Um, and if you're drafting this weekend, or this week, good luck. We're in the thick of it, right? Fantasy 14, next 14 to 16 weeks, we're going to be nothing but doing this. I remember last year at the end, and I think I remember talking about it, like, I'm done. I'm so tired right now. I'm so pumped to get into it. So we'll see. We'll see how the season goes this year. So let's jump into the episode. A little bit different episode. I think I said that last time too, but it's again today a little bit different episode. After last week's episode, a regular listener, someone who I've met in the hobby, who I've set up at shows, I've seen him at shows. I hadn't seen him in a little while, and he reached out to me after the last episode, said, "Hey, I hear you're having trouble. I listened to the episode. You're having trouble getting inventory. Come buy all my inventory. I'm getting out of the hobby. Come take a look, make an offer." He said he was exiting the hobby for many reasons, but mostly because he lost too much money, which in turn, led to him exiting the hobby. He called it hobby burnout. I don't. I think this is different than hobby burnout. I think people mistake this situation for hobby burnout. I think people making costly, bad decisions in the hobby that leaves them trying to make up for those losses, risking even more to get back to even. Let's face it, most of those people would still be in the hobby, right? If they hit one or two of those lottery cards they were chasing. But I think eventually, right? Eventually, they would end up right back in that situation. So eventually, they would exit the hobby, right? Who knows? Some people are lucky. Like I know, we know some people are lucky. We see people come in and go buy one box of something. We buy 30 boxes of something and get nothing. Somebody buys one box and pulls out, the CJ Stroud downtown or something like that. So I mean, some people are just lucky too, but most people, are not so lucky, and they end up chasing losses. And they chase it with even higher, right? They start getting into higher end breaks, hoping to hit a bigger card. Then they start buying and ripping hobby boxes, and the thought is, I'm down this much now. I mean, I'm good. I'm going to take this chance now. I'm going to spend this additional money on something to try to hit something bigger, or get into the higher end repacks, on whatnot, and then ending up further into debt with nothing to show for it and nothing really to sell. And this is not the first time I've heard this. And I even said, "Hey, show me what you have." And for what I saw in the inventory, I thought to myself, "Man, I feel for this guy. I feel for this guy." I mean, I know he's been in the hobby a while, and I know he's probably, you know, do we call it luck again, unlucky, or just a bad plan? Just a bad plan in the hobby. It's even more now than ever that people can get behind pretty quickly on wax and breaks and buying online, whether it's on eBay, Facebook, Instagram. I had a hobby friend say to me recently, "I may need an intervention with my whatnot addiction." And he was being funny. I mean, I understand that. He was being funny. Uh, but for some, it's a serious thing. It's just a lot of money being spent, and then you're getting the stuff in the mail, and you're starting to look it up, and you're being like, "Did I make a good? Was this a good decision to buy this stuff, or was it a bad decision?" I mean, to me, it's so important to have a strategy, right, and make a plan. And when things start to derail, stop, step back, and make a new plan, right? Make a better plan. I mean, we can't just keep going down that same road and thinking things are just going to get better. Don't keep chasing the bad plan. Yeah, I mean, if it didn't work, it didn't work. I used to have a friend. We used to go to the casino before I jumped back in the hobby. And it just wasn't his day, but he would just keep getting money and running back to the table and getting money and running. And I'd say, "What are you doing, man? It's just not your day. It's not going to happen today." I mean, if it would have happened, it would have happened by now. Let's go. And I no matter whether I was up or down, I'd say, "Let's go. Let's just go." And he'd be like, "No, I want." I'd be like, "No." Like I was his friend. Like I was trying to pull him out of there, trying to save him from himself. And it got to a point where we stopped going. Like we did other things, but I just wouldn't go to the casino with him because I didn't want to stand there and watch him just make these bad decisions. And I used to talk to him about it and say, you need a better plan. You need to go in there and say, "Look, this is my budget, and when it's gone, I got to go home. Like I'm not going to keep running and figuring out a way to get more money to keep playing." um, don't keep chasing a bad plan. I mean, if you made a plan and it's not working out, start a new plan, right? And in this hobby, right, back to the cards, there's no off season in the hobby. It's 12 months a year. I think it's so important that we pace ourselves and stick to whatever plan, and we all have a different plan. Every single one of us have a different plan. I talk about having a group of guys that I hang out with, and we all do something different. None of us have the same. Even though I look at somebody else and I'm like, "Oh, that works for him," it may not work for me. He has a connection here. This one has a connection there. This one knows more about this. I mean, we all have a different plan, and we're all in the same hobby, right? Trying to accomplish the same thing, and we all have a different plan. And it's so important to know, right? To know yourself, know the plan that you put in place for yourself, and to stick to it and not get derailed by like, "Oh, look, this is his plan and I see what he's doing there. Maybe I should run over, maybe I should try doing that." No, that's his plan and it works for him. right? Many other people tried that plan and it didn't work for them, but it works for this person for whatever reason, for the connections or whatever he's doing or his knowledge or whatever. That plan is working for him. So we need to make our own, even if it works for other people. We can certainly try to emulate it, but we need to know what works for us. We know, you know, what is going to work for us. And we have to decide too, is this a hobby or is this a business? Right? I mean, that right down the middle. I mean, it is a hobby and we're part of the hobby, but you have to know if you're in this hobby, if you're running it like a business. Like, am I coming out here because I need to make money or I want to make money, or the money I make, am I reinvesting back into myself, into my hobby side of it? Or am I just a collector, right? I want to go out, I want to spend my money, I want to buy cards and add them to my collection, right? I can honestly say when I started back, when I jumped back into the hobby, I came into this with a business mindset, only because that's the way my mind works, right? I my whole life, I've been able to look at something and say, if I jumped into this, could I profit from it? And if I was profiting from it, what would the profit go to? And would it be something I would enjoy doing? And kind of that's the way my mind works. So everything I've done in my life, I figured out, if I enjoy doing it and I can create a profit, can I roll that profit back into myself, back into the fun of what I'm doing? But that's the way my mind works. I came into this hobby when I jumped back in and I said, here's my initial investment. This is the money that I'm going to invest in this hobby for my entertainment, right? Because at that time, coming back in, it was a hobby. It was going to be entertaining and it was going to be for my personal collection. What made me feel good? And people refer to the cards as art, right? And you could certainly do that. But whatever I wanted. And the cards that I had, the cards that I invested in that I thought were important to me when I first jumped in, I don't think I have one of those cards. They were so important to me when I jumped in. I said, I need to have this card, that card, this card, and other cards that I jumped into saying, I think I can buy these cards and sell these cards, right? I have them still here in the office. There are cards in this office that I had that I bought in my first 6 months that I still own, that I like those cards, right? Or I felt that I was going to make money on them and then I didn't. And I said, you know what? Instead of letting them go cheap, I'd rather just keep them for myself because there is a reason I bought those cards. But coming in, I had no expectations of any return on that initial investment. No expectations whatsoever. It was like I was going to the movies or I was going to the casino or I was going on vacation. I had this amount of money and I was going to go spend it. That was my budget. I had no expectations on any return of my initial investment. When I came into the hobby, I learned from other people. That's another thing I do. I learn well from other people how to make money in the hobby. But that money I was making, I just wanted the hobby to become self-sufficient, right? I just wanted to get to a point where after my initial investment, I could buy, sell, and trade and just continue to roll in the hobby without having to keep putting money in. Um, because and I've said this from the beginning. If I required this money for income, like any profit I made on cards, if I required that for any kind of income, I wouldn't be here in the hobby because I would not be able to live on the money that I make here in the hobby. And that's exactly what it is. It's a hobby for me. Even though I come to it with the business standpoint, I buy cards, I grade cards, and I talk to you all the time about how we can make some profit on it or how I can make some profit on it and how I do make profit. But I'm doing that so this hobby can be self-sufficient. I'm not doing that to live. I'm not paying a mortgage, a car payment. I'm not paying any of that stuff. I'm just rolling my profits back in so I can afford more cars for myself or just continue on in the hobby. I believe there's a lot of better ways to make money, right, than in a hobby. And if it's fun for me, if it's fun, I'm gonna stick around and do it, right? If it's fun, it is a hobby because a hobby should be fun. Most hobbies, right, require continuous input of money, and most people don't realize that. We watch other people in the hobby. It looks like fun, right? But there's different levels of being in the hobby. It's okay to admire other people's cards in the hobby, but we shouldn't try to keep up with those people. And if you've been in breaks, I know I've been in breaks, especially I've watched these higher end breaks and I've been in breaks and I used to see one person or two people go in and just buy all these high end slots, right? Whether they got the great cards or not, they were buying the high dollar. And whatever the high dollar was, they were buying into it, spending a ton of money. More money than I could spend, more money than I've made in this hobby that I could go out and actually spend in the hobby. And never once did I think to myself, "Geez, how can I be that person? How could I come out and do that?" I don't have the finances for that, right? This hobby, I would have to make so much more money in this hobby to be able to afford those things, right? What do we have to do in the hobby? We have to create a budget. We have to know what our limitations are, right? We don't wanna end up overextended, underwater in the hobby. Because once we get there, it's so hard to work your way back from that. And it's okay if you create a budget or you create a plan and you're constantly changing. I know I am. I'm still following part of the initial plan I put together from, 4.5 years ago. I can tell you it's changed a lot since then, but still the outline of it and that outline, what I built was like a safety net for me that I would never get to a point where I was ever chasing in the hobby. And there's sometimes I've gone outside that budget, right? Or I've gone outside that plan. And as soon as I do, I always remember this is why you created that plan for making foolish mistakes. I mean, I've been down those roads. I think we all have. I bought a hobby box I probably shouldn't have bought and couldn't afford, right? Getting into breaks, thinking like, "Oh, I really think I'm gonna hit something good here," and buying into a higher end break, but it's okay. You learn from that and you move on from it. I mean, if you think back when you were a kid, right? For most of us, that's where we started in the hobby when we were kids. And what it is today is not what it was designed to be. It wasn't the original design. The original design was a kid going to a local store with his allowance and buying a pack of cards. And then, at least for me, because back then was a little bit longer than some of you had the ability to hit any chase card in those cheap packs. That was it. It was just those packs at the local store. But that was the design of the hobby, and most of us got out at one point or another in our lives, right? And then we jumped back in later in life. Most of us thinking our cards were, worth a fortune. Come to find out they weren't. But we re-entered a hobby that was now just for adults, not for the kids, right? Where we're at in this hobby's not for the kids. Even though you hear everybody saying we need to bring the kids in, the kids need to be part of it. And we all do our best. We go to shows, we give the kids, we're giving them cards and we're talking to the parents. We're trying to educate the parents, that are coming with the kids. I mean, we really want the kids in the hobby, but this hobby is really not designed for the kids. These card companies, they're only catering to people who are going to spend money on their cards, right? I don't know how many kids who could afford the price of hobby boxes today. I can't afford the price of some hobby boxes, right? So I don't know how these kids do. And I'm sure they're just relying on the parents, which means it's really an adult driven hobby. The prices of these boxes of this wax is just where it's gone. It's just, it amazes me, the prices on them. I mean, even these kids trying to chase their favorite players. I mean, on a good card, can they? Can they even afford that? Can a kid really afford that? So it becomes up to us, the adults with expendable income, right? We're the ones who drive the hobby. We're the ones that put the hobby where it is today. And you hear people talking about investments, and maybe so, maybe so. But my investments, they go through my financial planner. They're not the hobby, right? Again, it's a hobby. And if all my stuff here, if all my cards went to zero, right, it's not the end of the world for me. I'm like, I move on. Um, Now, if my financial planner calls and says it went to zero, there's a problem, right? But not here in the hobby. And I see a lot of people. I talk to a lot of people. I see how easy it is once you get behind in this hobby. When you get into debt in the hobby, it's not easy to work your way out of it. All these sites take credit cards, and a lot of people, I mean, we go to shows, and you talk about all the people that go to shows and stuff, but I think most people, the majority of people, hobby from home, right? They're not going out to shows, right? When you're really starting to talk about people in the hobby and collectors, I think a lot of people are doing this from home. Um, and whether you're getting into breaks or you're buying wax, I mean, they all take credit cards, right? Just keeps adding up. And I've been there. I've been there. I get a credit card bill at the end of the month, and I'm like, "Hey, what the heck did I spend money on?" And I start looking. I'm like, "Oh yeah, I guess that stuff added up, right?" Um, I just talked to somebody the other day who spent a decent amount of money on 2 sealed cases of wax, right? Expecting to hit, the case hit in each case. The hobby math says, and this is what he said, the hobby math says there's 2 case hits, 1 case hit per box. And that case hit, right? That downtown is going to cover the cost of the case. Ripped both cases, got no case hit. Yikes, right? The hobby math was wrong. They got, and I quote, a bunch of nice $5 rookie cards. And again, if they can afford it and that's part of their plan, and that's what they're putting into the hobby, right? Not expecting anything out, that's fine. But if they're relying on pulling something out of that case that's going to recoup some of that money, then it's a problem. If you feel yourself in the hobby spiraling or overextending yourself, it's okay to step back. A number of people I know in the hobby over the last few years have taken a month off, 2 months off, regroup, made a new plan, created a new hobby plan, and jumped back in. And I know they're happier now than they were when they were originally in there. Just taking the knowledge that you've accumulated in the hobby, right? Taking the time off, working your way back to zero, learning from those mistakes, emulating with other people, like emulating yourself or emulating other people that are successful. Now they're back and they say the hobby is a much better place for them. That doesn't happen to everybody, right? But it happens to some of us. And you're better off stepping back, regrouping, creating a new plan versus continue to make the same mistakes and chasing losses and spiraling further. I know a lot of people now who are starting to make content, short videos, or even podcasts, right? And they've reached out to me, and when they started, they said, look, I was expecting to have like a ton of views and subscribers and followers. And I tell them, man, that takes time. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen in 6 months or a year unless you're lucky, right? Unless you're those people that are lucky and they could pull downtowns and buy one box and pull it downtown. Um, I mean, I felt the same way at the beginning. I thought all this was going to happen, you know, and then I used to think, man, there's got to be a faster way to build up. And here I am. I'm in season 5, right? Almost 3 years. Actually, April 1st will be 3 years of doing the podcast. And it's just a constant grind. There's no fast way to get followers or subscribers or viewers or listens. I mean, I'm out at so many shows. I'm talking to people. I'm posting my stuff everywhere, right? It just takes time with this content creation. It just takes time to build. And if there was a faster way to do it, I would have figured it out right now. Slow and steady and be consistent, right? And I say this because I think that's what the hobby should be, right? The hobby should be this, a nice steady pace, not a sprint, but a marathon. And if you find yourself in these situations, reach out to your people in your hobby, ask for advice. I know most people would be happy to help. I've had a number of people reach out to me. I've given them advice. And I know there's so many great people in this hobby. People are always willing to help in this hobby. If you find yourself in these situations, reach out to anybody and say, hey, what's your plan? Help me get my plan. Help me put my plan together, right? And then you have to figure out, nobody can write your plan or create your budget. I mean, that's for you. But we all have. I say this all the time. We all have our superpowers, right? We're good at certain things and maybe not at others, right? But we're all a little different. That's why in the group of people that I talk to on a daily basis, we're all in this hobby. We all basically do the same thing, but we all do it differently, right? Because we're all just different people. We need to figure out what our superpowers are, what works for us, what we can do that makes us the most successful. And that's it. The hobby's not going anywhere, right? If you need to step back, take some time off, the hobby's going to be here welcoming you back with open arms when it's time for you to come back. Step back, take a break. It'll be there. It'll be here, and all your friends will be here too, waiting for you, waiting to welcome you back, because that's what we do, right? We see people that we haven't seen in a long time, and they show back up. We're happy to see you, right? We're there to embrace you. No episode Monday, Labor Day, holiday weekend. Usually at this point, I would always say Sunday night, look for those steals on eBay. And I'll still do it, but the last couple Monday holidays, there really haven't been any steals out there to steal away. But I'll be out there grinding Sunday night, seeing if I can get some steals on eBay. I'll be back next Thursday with a brand new episode. I want to thank everyone for tuning in. And if you like what you hear, please definitely subscribe. Most importantly, tell a friend and spread the word. Until next time, take care of yourselves and everyone around you.